Hey guys, welcome back to chillgabi and the Unexpected Journey. I'm your host Gabriella Pinto, aka chillgabi, and welcome to the first official episode of the podcast. Now, two things before we start. Number one, I actually just recorded this entire podcast and then my phone died while I was recording it. I was at like 7.5 minutes, which is where I was going to end it. And then I charge my phone and I go back to the voice memos app and the whole file is corrupted. I cannot play it. I cannot send it anywhere. So basically it was all for nothing. So I am irritated. Number two, I am sitting in a stationary motor vehicle right now because I heard somewhere that the acoustics in the car are really good. And I thought it would be amazing to, have really good audio on this podcast. Not realizing that apparently 10 p.m. on a Sunday is when the road that I live on is the most busy because the amount of cars that have been driving by me is insane. So I'm sorry if you guys hear any cars in the background. This is the quietest place that I could think of, and there's nothing I can really do about the cars. But I thought for the first podcast that I'm going to make, it would be very fitting to speak about my first year away from home and all the trials and tribulations that I've had to overcome and all the lessons that I've learned, because I know you guys are absolutely dying to hear about them. So yeah, on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday actually marks officially 10 months that I've been in the United States of America. I moved here on the 1st of February 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and it has definitely been a little bit of a roller coaster because the first few weeks when I arrived here was basically just me trying to find my legs because the situation I was in was super awkward. For those of you who don't know, I have been working as an au pair in America, which is basically somewhat of a glorified babysitter. I live with a host family and then I look after the kids. So I moved to a country that I've never lived in before to stay with people that I had never met before in real life. And it sounds like I'm about to start a murder mystery podcast instead of this advice and storytime disaster. But for the first couple of weeks to a month, I would say, it was awkward because I was basically living in a stranger's house and I had to manage feeling out of place while simultaneously being devastated that I was away from my closest family and friends. So when the 1 month mark hit, I started feeling, a little bit more comfortable in my space. But I started to get this really strange and persistent anxious feeling basically all the time. And when I have these kinds of issues, the one person I really like to talk to is my older brother, who is physically 23, but mentally he is wise beyond his years. I love him so much and he always has the best advice. So I went to him, I called him and I was like, listen, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on, but I feel so anxious all the time. Basically, if I'm not keeping myself busy with work or my silly little everyday tasks, as soon as I'm standing still, I'm feeling anxious. And I'm laying in bed at night. I'm tossing and turning. I cannot sleep. What is going on? To which he simply replied, it's separation anxiety. And all of a sudden, everything just made so much sense. I was thousands of kilometers away from every comfort zone I had ever come to know. I was far away from my family, my friends, my loved ones, and my body's natural response was just to overrun my system with so much anxiety. I could not even function like a normal human being. And it got to a breaking point where involuntarily I was having these really intrusive thoughts about horrible things happening to my friends and family back home in South Africa and like never being able to see them again. And so I was having to manage this at the same time as I was trying to call my parents every day, and I tried to put on a brave face because I hated worrying them about how much I was struggling, because I was trying to put myself into their shoes. Like, their youngest child has just moved to a foreign country all by herself, and I didn't want to worry my parents. But I remember this day so well. I FaceTimed my parents, and as soon as my mom answered the phone, I was like, trying to look happy. And I remember she looked at me and she was like, cry, my baby. It's okay. I know you want to. She said those words to me, and I was just a mess. I was a mess of tears. And now I imagine moving away from home for the first time under any circumstance is difficult, but I moved during the height of COVID. So when I arrived here, there was basically nothing for me to do except work, eat, sleep, and cry about how unhappy and anxious I was. And it was basically a loop. I was on loop every single day. And this went on for a couple of months until I was fully vaccinated at the end of March. And I really wish the story I was telling was, after I got vaccinated, everything was amazing and I started to live this American adventure. But what ended up ultimately happening was I became very comfortable in my sadness, which is an extremely dangerous feeling because it takes a lot of work to pull yourself out of what essentially was a 3-month depressive episode. And now I was vaccinated, but it just boiled down to I was used to it. I was very comfortable in my moping around and my unhappiness. And it's so hard to look back on my life and to put it all onto a timeline because of how mundane my life became. It was the same thing day in and day out. And I'm not saying it was all bad, because I'm actually in a position I'm very lucky to be in where I have an amazing host family and amazing host children who I love to death. Sometimes they can be a lot, but it really does feel like a little sibling relationship where, sometimes I want to kick them in the butt, but I love them to death. And so there was good times, there was amazing times, and I went on trips with them and, we did fun things. But my personal life, I don't even think you can call it a personal life because it was non-existent. And my reaction to being in this environment, this depressing, anxious reaction, was a complete shock to me at first, because this is something I wanted to do. It's not like someone was forcing me to take this gap year. I'm very lucky to have parents who support me through and through with everything I've ever wanted to do in my life. Bless them. I have changed my mind about every part of my life, and they have always stood behind me. And I'm so lucky. And this gap year was so important to me, so much so that I was actually supposed to come here last year, April, so the April of 2020. But then COVID started to happen and everything went wrong. So my visa was getting cancelled. There was a 2-week lockdown. There was a travel ban. And every time something like this happened, I was having full-on breakdowns in my room back in South Africa because I wanted to move to America and experience this life-changing experience. I wanted it so badly. So in a matter of the first month of me being here, the narrative changed from I so badly wanted to move to America to I so badly wanted to go home. And now that I'm doing better physically and mentally, I can see that it wasn't the country or the job that made me feel this way, but it was me. And a quote that comes to mind that really made me understand my predicament was, "You must break the pattern today or the loop will repeat tomorrow." And moving to America was me breaking the pattern. And in turn, I learned so much about myself and about my life. And I've learned to be independent and to enjoy being alone. And I've learned to be an adult and to do mundane things like my own laundry. And most importantly, I've accepted that the mountains I wish to climb will always be there when I want to try again, but to never stop trying and to always love myself. And if I do not stop talking now, this podcast will be too long. The podcast can only be 5 to 10 minutes, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you're feeling interested in hearing more about my lessons learned and stories about my year, then feel free to let me know. But until then, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and remember that I love you.